All right, everyone. Welcome back to Unemployed Millennial Podcast. I am your host, Anne Marie. I have been gone for so long. Honestly, time just seems to be passing. I can't really understand it. Some things it's good for some things. And then for podcasting consistency and like YouTube uploading, it is pretty bad. I last posted a podcast 4 months ago on February 2nd of this year. And then my last YouTube video was 7 months ago, which is crazy. Honestly, personally, I feel like I've actually been doing a lot, just not a lot of social media, YouTube podcast creations. I'm wondering if you can hear that train in the background. This will be a real good test of my microphone if you can, or if you can't. So I guess that's good. But I'm currently in Anchorage, Alaska, and if you're watching this on YouTube, you can probably see that it's light outside. It is actually 9:03 p.m., and this is why I love Alaska. We're entering the golden hour, and you'll be able to see. I have like the screen drawn, but or the blinds drawn, but it's become a very beautiful sunny night, and the sunset will last for like 2 hours. And usually by the time it's like 11 p.m. at this current moment, or on this during this time of the summer, the train is like really distracting me. The sun just really hits different here. I see colors that I do not see anywhere else in nature, but also on myself. Like it's just like a golden light everywhere. So it's very beautiful. I will say that I actually did try recording. I actually recorded an entire 2-hour podcast, and I don't know what it was about that podcast. I think maybe I'm kind of talking about the same things, or I'm going to try to talk about the same things. But maybe I was like a little too vulnerable, but it took a lot of energy to film that podcast, and my face was like tomato red the entire time. So I think I just maybe overdid it. Maybe I wasn't ready to talk about whatever I was talking about, or maybe that is kind of like the podcast that I should be sharing with the world, like the real personal, vulnerable podcasts. But for the sake of my, I don't know, maybe it's also just like I'm filming these in video now. Maybe it's actually better not to, so that maybe I could feel more comfortable posting that instead of just posting like, I feel like you could just tell that I was stressed just from the topics. So that's kind of interesting because I'm going to talk about the same topics, and we'll see if that happens in this podcast. So basically, what happened? What have I been doing since I disappeared on February 2nd? And I really haven't been updating like Instagram. I haven't really been posting stories. Part of me is kind of just like, I think when you're not in the swing of posting things, it's like an object in motion stays in motion. My social media motion is just motionless. And I don't know. I also think I just definitely have phases. Like I've been on, this year July 5th will be my 12th year anniversary on YouTube with the channel Amory Chase that I have. Like I think I had a few before then, but the current channel that I have been posting on 12 years. So I don't know. I definitely have times where I'm just not posting or it's not a priority. But I will say that I've actually really been wanting to post. It just hasn't been happening. But I do feel like I am actually ready to get back into it. And I feel very motivated to come back, especially for my 12th year, because I feel like I've actually taken like a 2-year unintentional break on posting on YouTube. And looking back over my YouTube lifetime, there are only 2 periods where I've actually kind of posted consistently on a schedule for probably almost a year or so. And that was my freshman year of college, and then about 2021, end of 2021 to like 2022, end of 2022-ish, and that was when I moved into your mom's house in New York. And every single time I am posting on a consistent basis, I always surprise myself. I've been thinking of this because I have been doing a ton of clearing out and cleansing. Like, I never really did that. My parents moved after high school, and I just never went through all of my stuff. They moved when I was interning in Shanghai, and I love this place, so I wasn't complaining. But I didn't ever really just go through all the shit that they graciously took for me. And so I've been kind of doing that in my closet space very slowly, but more so than I ever have like before. And it's been really nice because I think I can actually feel I can feel like a clearing happening, but it's also kind of insane to look back on kind of everything, even from like high school. So to give a little summary of what I've kind of been doing in the last however many months it's been, 4 months. After February 2nd, when I filmed that, I actually spent a month with my boyfriend, and we're long distance right now. So that was really nice. That was like the longest amount of time that we've spent together. I also am currently working on like 7 videos. Oh, this is my daily reminder. Okay. I'm going to silence my phone so I don't get distracted, but that is actually a huge update. That's my daily review for my Sober app. I don't actually do it every day on this app because I just do it every day in person, but I actually really like this app. What's it called? I Am Sober. So that's kind of a huge update for me too. I think this was the culprit of like why my face was so red and like why I had such a hard time in my last podcast. So we're going to just really ease into it. But I am 6 months sober of cannabis as of this past weekend, and like 5 months, and did I write it down from my app? 5 months and 9 days of alcohol, and I'm not doing any other substances. There was a stint of what's it called? A vape pen, not a weed vape pen, but just like a nicotine vape pen when my friend came to visit. And I don't know, I just realized I'm like, I have to put blanket statements on everything because that became like my new little obsession for that week. So after that, I was just like, okay, I have to just say no to basically everything. So yeah, that was kind of interesting. And what else? This summer will be, or I guess this year is my 10-year high school reunion. And I actually spent the end of the school year substitute teaching at my old high school. I did this in 2021, and I loved that experience. I actually made a video about it. Then I didn't make a video. Actually, I did. I was filming a different video, and it just kind of captured some moments in there. It's a reading video that I decided to make. I haven't posted it. I don't know when it'll be up, hopefully soon, but so that was really cool. I'll talk about that. And yeah, basically just a ton of updates, and I'm going to try to cover some plans going forward. So as I was saying, I was cleaning out my closet, and I was reading this zine that I made in freshman year, and I kind of remember making it, but not entirely, but it was a freshman year. I called it the Amazine, A-M-A zine. Very clever. And it was a 9th grade English assignment. And honestly, I was like, the quality was okay. I got like at 100% on it. And then I started like reading through the blurbs, or I don't even know what it was. And it was really interesting because there was something about, I should have just brought it with me, but it was really interesting because I didn't expect the vulnerability that I had towards the end, but I remember freshman year of high school was a tough year just personally, like, and I think for my family. And in the magazine, I'm like, I'm grateful for this year or for this magazine or this assignment for pushing myself into, I have no idea what I was writing about, But I said in that magazine that it's like I tend to, maybe I was literally talking about school because I had a ton of absences. They were all excused by my mom, but I just like literally hundreds of classes. I just did not go to school. And I think maybe I was saying like, I'm grateful because when I go through hard times, I tend to withdraw. And something I should have just brought it. I actually didn't plan on talking about this at all. This is not on my little list. I tried to make an outline. This is what happens when you make outlines. But that kind of, I was impressed, honestly, by the vulnerability that I showed in this paper. And obviously, I've done this before. I can remember assignments where it calls for vulnerability, like in my occupational therapy creativity workshop class that I took at USC. She had like kind of topics or prompts that kind of called for you to like dig deep. And I remember writing something and I was like, this is really personal, but I mean, it's the truth. And this is just my first response to like, when was the last time you felt silenced, or when in your life have you felt silenced? And then I wrote about the time I was sexually assaulted. I have a video on that actually too on my YouTube. But this one was just like it was just like thrown in there kind of like, oh, I tend to withdraw. So I'm grateful for either like the school year or I don't know what it was. And maybe like a way to reflect on this year or something. And I was surprised at, writing that because I was like, oh, this is like, up until that point, it was like really lighthearted and cute. And I was kind of like joking around and I was like, I'm grateful for Miss P for creating this assignment so I could work on this and create this magazine, like blah, blah, blah. I had an interview with my brother who also had that teacher and it was really short and like just kind of funny. And then I read that and then it kind of just made me think because I do tend to do that a lot when I am stressed or going through something. I tend to very much like withdraw and just I deal with things by myself. And I don't know. I feel like I've been thinking about that for YouTube because, I mean, I think I associate my YouTube channel currently, or I was associating it with just negative emotions because I don't know why it was so hard for me to come back. And then I was like, oh, I had this realization. It's like I haven't been posting, and that is kind of like when, honestly, now that I'm sober, I'm like much more aware of when I'm like not responsive or not responding. And usually like I'll talk to like a core like group of people. Like my family always knows where I am. My boyfriend I talk to every day. But for a lot of like the inner circle still, it's like I can be withdrawing. And I had this realization within this year that was like, I'm not really giving people an opportunity to support me or let them into my world if I just completely stop. Like either with YouTube or with podcasts. And it's like cutting communication. And I think that's good and healthy. I think everyone should honestly take a break from social platforms. But it's also just I think, self-defense mechanism in a lot of ways. And it's also me having like a fear response instead of just being like, I am creating things to connect with people. That's always been my goal. And I have to kind of reframe how I'm seeing it, at least for my YouTube channel. And it was really interesting too, because I'm backing up like all of my files on this giant external hard drive. And I was watching my videos from like November of 2021. And my videos are just kind of like long, chatty videos. And I really get an idea of like how I'm feeling in the moment and what I'm going through and like all of my thoughts. And I'm like, honestly, I would probably cut that at this point in time just because it's too long. I'd be like self-conscious of like, does this matter? Is this important? But in the moment, it was important. And I don't know, I was watching that video over and I was like, I'm kind of grateful that I had this because it's a true reflection of like everything that I was going through in that moment. And like, what is this YouTube channel for? I mean, not this one, but my other, and this one actually, if not to just capture the moment. And it's like, it doesn't have to be so personal, or I don't have to, because even when I watch my videos from like 10 years ago, I'm like, I don't recognize that person at all. There's like a weird feeling of like, I don't even remember filming this video. So it's interesting, just going back. And I'm glad I wrote that little thing on that Amazine, because I'm like, oh, that's like it was a really good way to just show exactly me during that time. And I was like, honestly kind of surprised at the writing. Anytime I go back, even if I was like 16 years old, I'm like surprised by my personality in writing. So yeah, all that to say is that's probably just like a long pep talk for me to not post this video if my face starts to get red. I don't think it will. I think I'm good. So I have been 6 months sober from cannabis, which is, I think the weird thing is I never really talked about this on any of my social media platforms, but I would talk about it all the time to my friends, like, and my family, honestly, because I honestly, I'm one of those people who's like, alcohol kind of sucks. I think weed is so much better. And I genuinely think it really did help me. I saw it as a medicine. And looking back, truly, I don't really regret that period of time where I did smoke. I think it got to a degree where it was not a medicine anymore, and it was just kind of a crutch. But I don't know. I feel like these are entire topics on their own too, whether it's weed or alcohol. So let me know if you want me to do, or I might just do, I don't know if I'll do a completely separate episode. I think the primary reason why I stopped, it's interesting because I also made a video, I think the first time that I actually tried to do a sober month, I think just from alcohol, maybe also. I think I always do them kind of at the same time, because for me a sober month is like a sober month. I just had this discussion with some friends that I hung out with this past weekend, where they were like, yeah, we have these friends who are like, oh, I'm sober from alcohol, but then they're like smoking every day or doing other hard drugs. And yeah, for me, being sober is just like raw dogging life other than caffeine. But honestly, I'm actually considering doing like a little stint where I cut that too, because I think I'm just very sensitive, and I do think that I can overdo it with caffeine sometimes, although I only usually have like 2, max 3 coffees a day. Sometimes I'm like cold brew. I don't even know how much caffeine is in that sometimes, but yeah, I don't know. For some reason this was really still shame inducing, even though it's something that I'm like, oh yeah, this is something that I think is really cool and interesting, because it's like interesting because I feel like a lot of millennials genuinely, and like, I think it just depends on where you're from. Like I would say in Alaska, honestly, I know so many functional alcoholics who don't even really bat an eye at the level of drinking, which is very appalling. And then I have some friends who are very straight edged and like don't ever partake in drinking or smoking or anything. So it's kind of like an interesting dynamic. But for me, especially in like the summers in Alaska, that's like when it's like triggering, because I'm like, the sun, it's like semi-cloudy now, but it's like a beautiful day outside. Everyone in Alaska, when it's sunny out, they'll like drop everything and go celebrate, go outside, go on a hike, go fishing, whatever. And for me, there's just like an association with just like being out in the Alaskan outdoors and just like drinking a beer And that's just really fun to me. Or I don't know, I've always kind of been like a little conscious of my drinking habits. Some people will either, I know people who have like smoked every single day of their lives since like high school. I didn't start smoking until I was a freshman in college. And it's kind of bizarre because everywhere that I moved, so I went to LA for college from 2014 to 2018. And then I moved back, or actually I lived there until 2019. Weed became legalized, but it was crazy because the way that I got into smoking weed in college is I hung out with all of these scholarship kids. Like, I don't know if they still have like the scholarship dorm at USC anymore because they have the Village now, but it was called Burnkrant. And literally the group of kids that I was introduced to weed from were all the top of their class and just smoked all the time. And they all just like hung out in their living room, and there was a high barrier of entry for me to actually like enjoying it. And then once I did, I think it was a transformative experience, honestly, because I was so anxious and socially awkward or socially anxious that I think it just kind of took me outside of myself. Because after that, I lived with like a group of people into my junior and senior year, or it was my sophomore and junior year. No, junior year and their senior year. And we would just like hang out, and then at night we would like get together, smoke. And it was an interesting experience because I think literally before college, I would not really be able to talk in a group of people without being so judgmental of myself that I'd be like, I would just be, as I was talking, I would be judging myself and what I was saying and just being like, that's stupid. Like, why would you say that? And this experience of just like smoking with my girlfriends at night, like in our house, was, I think, transformative for my social anxiety, because one of my friends would be doing the dumbest thing. They'd be like behind a door pretending to be a dinosaur and just like roaring behind the door. And I just remember this distinct moment when I was looking at her and I was just thinking how much love I felt for her and how I was just like laughing so hard. And I was like, she is doing like one of the dumbest things, you know, like you're pretending to be a dinosaur, but I still love her. And I don't know, for some reason that was just like a transformational year or experience of just being like, I am so hard on myself and no one is thinking that. And also, if I still have like so much love, if I have so much love for my friend, like I can do the same thing and people will still like me. I don't know what it was about my social anxiety, but I truly think that we just like really helped. And then I also think I know that I had a huge like mind body disconnect. And I really think that we'd helped me get into my body and less in my mind. Like I'm a very head person. Like growing up, I always was just like, yeah, I'm just going to rely on my noggin. Like I was like awkward. You could tell in pictures. I was just uncomfortable in my body. And I think honestly, yoga and weed helped me just like feel into my body a lot. And then I think it also just like helped my creativity. Like genuinely, I would edit, and I think again, I have such a high, like loud sensor and internal voice that's kind of judgmental and mean. And so it would lower that voice so that I could just like be creative. And I think it was really helpful for me until it was not, and until I was like relying on it as like a crutch for creativity or just as a way to escape. And honestly, I think that the world is so weird right now that there is, I don't know, maybe it's just because I'm like getting older too, where I'm like, okay, this is kind of acceptable, and I always maybe knew this time was coming. I'm like talking, I don't know, but I also think that the world is like so bizarre right now, and every single day on the news you're just like hearing something weird and different, that it's just like kind of better to be sober, because I don't know how to explain that thought. But yeah, so it's tough for me because I'm pretty sure I'm done with weed for now, but I do think it had benefits. But that doesn't mean that there are not cons, like a lot of cons. Like, so as I mentioned, weed became legalized in California like a few years after I was a freshman. It became legal in Alaska when I moved back. It's legal in Washington, which is where I spent some time, where I grew up there, but I mean, it wasn't legal then. And then now it's legal in New York. I think actually most of the shops are illegal, but back in my day when I was living in New York, I had to go around on a boosted board and go around asking people who they got their weed from, like on the streets of New York. I think I actually ran into a subscriber and was like, hey, do you have a person? But yeah, it's legal everywhere now. And honestly, when I went to Austin, I was grateful. That was actually kind of the first stint into my sobriety, is because it's not legal in Texas. And if you just get so used to doing a habit in the same environment, it's actually so hard to break it. I still get kind of triggered now. Like on 420, it was a beautiful day outside, and I was just like walking, because I walk like every day. But I was just like, wow, this would be a great day to just sit outside and celebrate. But I mean, it gets easier. It's easy on a day-to-day basis now. But I think it is kind of dangerous, the ease that you can get weed. And also what's scary to me is just the way that people are very unconscious about their use. Like, again, I have friends from high school who literally probably have smoked every single day since their high school days, and it is now our 10-year reunion without even thinking about it. I will say that also the same thing goes for alcohol. Like, I have friends who drink a few drinks every single day, and I don't know if they think about it that much, but it's just very normalized. And yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's a good reality to be in, because towards the end of it, I think your body tells you also when you're done with something. And towards the end of my time smoking, I was like getting kind of paranoid, and it wasn't as fun and relaxing and enjoyable, because there were times where it was like absolute bliss, and towards the end half, also maybe just because I knew that I was like, I need to stop doing this now. This is not good for me and a productive use of my time, but it just started not being fun. And for alcohol, I will say that it's much easier for me, I think, just because I get Asian glow, which is like where my face gets really flushed and my body gets hot. But it was kind of bizarre. Like, I would be in the airport and like get a drink because, like, I don't know, I'm in like a lounge or something where it has free drinks. I feel like that's the hardest place, but not even anymore, because it just got so uncomfortable for me to be drinking that I don't really miss it at all. Except for, I guess, socializing. I will say that I have not been really socializing. This was like my first weekend that I actually went to a event where I knew everyone was going to be drinking. Otherwise I've kind of just been avoiding. I've been not really hermiting, but kind of. I guess I've just been traveling a lot too, so it's kind of easier to avoid social situations. But towards the end of my like December of last year, when I knew that for the new year I was gonna do totally sober, when I had one glass of rosé, it was really bizarre. Like, I had like a straight line of just red where my cheeks were flushed, and then my neck was just like normal colored. I was starting to get really interesting patterns on my face when I drank like even one drink. Like, sometimes it would just be like line down the cheek. It was weird, because before, you just have like redness, flushedness all over, but then it started getting into lines, and I was like, I don't know, this is kind of bizarre. So it is interesting though, because I used to meticulously track every single time I drank or smoked. Like, I have years of data of me just noting. It started, I think, on my notes, and then I also did like a visual representation on calendars when I was super into the Seinfeld method. I would just do a little key in the corner of whatever else I was tracking. And there are summers where like I would have a few drinks. I don't know. It's so easy to add up and accumulate over time if you're not conscious about it. Just like right now, I'm like loosely trying to do 75 hard. I haven't really done it. I mean, I'm actually getting much closer than, not doing anything, but my diet is just like, I'm not drinking soda, and I'm not eating fried foods because I love French fries. But fried foods, like, that's kind of a lot of things, like chips, other things. Everyone can get the idea. But it's so much easier to just be like, I'm not drinking soda, I'm not eating fried foods. And honestly, for some reason, the food that I've been making has been tasting a lot better. And I'm like, have my taste buds changed? My mom was like, it's probably because you're not smoking or drinking too. So I don't really get the munchies. I don't get the drunchies. And that was kind of a big problem with smoking too. So that's kind of nice. But I also want to say that, like, I made a video in like probably 2019 or 2018 or 2019 when I first did a sober month from alcohol, and I think also weed. I usually do them together. And it was really hard. I think that if you're so used to drinking or just doing anything on a regular basis, it is genuinely difficult to break a habit and break a bad habit. And so I don't know. I encourage everyone to do sober months to start, or a sober month. Even then, like, it's hard to do a sober month. And I know in my mind, like, this whole time, I'd been thinking of a time where I would do like a sober year. And it's interesting because, like, time moves really fast. And it's good for some things like sobriety. Like, I don't even feel like it's been 6 months because I'm just like, oh, that's crazy to me. So that compounds in a good way. But at first it was really, really hard for me to start. And I think genuinely every single time you actually put an effort into doing it, in this case, like sobriety, you are forming neural pathways that eventually make it easier and easier and easier, so that you will eventually be able to do a week, and then a month, and then a year. So that's kind of my update. And for some reason, this was so uncomfortable the last time I talked about it. I mean, I was actually kind of uncomfortable this time. So I'm just going to post this anyway. But I think it's because this is like a part of I'm very aware of, like, I'm very good at censoring myself and being like, oh, PR brain, this isn't like a great thing to talk about on the internet. But I kind of think it is, because genuinely, like, I think these are just taboo topics that I think are helpful to talk about. I don't know if this is helpful to anyone, but I feel like if I were listening to this and even like 6 months ago, like, I'd be like, oh, this is my sign that I should try to stop, because it's been something that's in the back of my head for a really long time, and it's time for me. For some reason, 28, actually, probably also, I don't know if I specifically chose 28. I knew, I'm like, honestly, like, I think it's good. Honestly, I think it's good to have times where you have the opposite of, like, what you think your higher self is, so that you know. Like, I'm kind of just one of those people who has to experience things for the most part to know where I'm at with it. But I think 28 seems an appropriate year. And also, I would say, like, my boyfriend was very helpful. Very, very helpful, because he was doing a sober 3 months when we met for the first time again. I had actually met him before. I think I explained that in my last podcast. I don't even know, so long ago. And also, he came with me to Alaska, like, the first week I came back. And that was honestly so much more helpful than I thought it would be, because this is like the place where I love just indulging. And, you know, I spent the pandemic here. We would be drinking with our neighbors. We'd just be like, you know, and also I think Alaska just goes hard on every single level, including alcoholism. And I don't actually have that many friends who smoke weed here, but I'm sure the ones that do just go, like my classmates go really hard. So it was super, super helpful to just have him be like stable rock person, so that I wasn't like getting triggered by my environment. And I will say, like, environment is so important because you're just like ingraining habits. So yeah, again, something that like really helped when I left and was in Austin. I was just like, I'm not gonna start here and make this a habit. And that worked really well. And that was kind of like an insight into my sobriety. So that's something that's definitely been interesting. I think also a huge reason why I started doing that. I'm like literally making this whole podcast about this. I'm not going to. This is the last thing I'll say, but I feel like I haven't really been doing a lot of things right lately. I will say I don't think I give myself credit enough. Like my mean voice or judgmental voice, whatever, comes in a lot, but I haven't been creating. And I don't know, I feel like I'm always saying like I'm blocked, but I'm just like, there needs to be nothing standing in my way other than myself that I can blame. Like, it's me taking full accountability and being like, I'm not where I want to be right now in my creative journey with my output and just like what I'm doing. And I cannot have anyone to blame or anything to blame but myself. So that's also a huge reason why is like, I want the clear mindedness and the lack of excuse, I guess, is interesting. So yeah, that's my sobriety. And let's see, I have also, what else did I do? I hosted friends, hosted Elliot and Nick. Oh, I thought I was gonna quit. I didn't do any of these updates. There was a point like 2 months ago, or like maybe even a month ago, where I thought I was going to quit YouTube. I like really seriously considered that in my brain. And I think my last podcast, or like maybe my last podcast was literally on that too. Maybe not. Maybe that was like a different podcast that I was planning to post, where basically I think kind of the gist of it is like, I've just been, you know, like I'm literally sitting on like 7 different videos that I've started and like even started editing. And I just have a lot of things that I want to do. And this has always been kind of like an issue, but a non-issue, like a good problem to have. I think Chris Williamson calls it like the curse of competency. It's like, I've been blessed to have like so many different avenues that, like, first of all, I think it's amazing that I have like all these different things that I've come up with in my own head and that I've like kind of gotten a start on. And I'm like, I think that this could honestly work and like be a good thing. But it's just like too many things at once. So I read the book, The One Thing. That one basically described my problem to a T. It was like, basically, if you're trying to do a ton of things at once and you're spinning your wheels at all ends and you're not getting anything done, it's because you're just focused on too many things. So I was really convinced. I was like, okay, this is literally my problem. I'm trying to do too many things at once and it's just taking up too much brain power. It's funny because now my solution is to just keep doing the exact same thing that I was doing before. But I, at the time, was like, I need to focus on doing something. And what did I just start? I just started to try to do my podcast. So I was like, I need to quit YouTube and making videos because this takes up a lot of brain space in my brain. And I need to just do one thing, and it's going to be my podcast. And so I was like fully prepared to just be like, okay, like, and my videos, honestly, like I would be trying to work on them and it just wouldn't work because I had one video that it was way too far from posting for my last video because it was like based off of the last video. And it was just a lot. So I was like, yeah, I'm not getting really anywhere with any of the things that I'm trying to do. So I need to quit YouTube. So that was like fully my thought process for a long while. And I'm still kind of trying to figure out like what it is I should really focus on. But I had the realization that my 12th year anniversary on YouTube is this year. And I looked at my channel and I'm like, honestly, I feel like I kind of ended because I, not like at a high or not in a good way and not for a good reason. I feel like I just kind of became scared of posting. And yeah, so for me, I'm just like, I don't feel satisfied with the ending of my channel or like what I've done so far. I feel like there's still more for me to do. I feel like I learned like a ton in the last like few years, especially. And I feel like I've met so many people and also new people in like the last 2 years that have inspired me like so much and have opened the doors to like the possibility of what could be outside of like, the dark side of YouTube, I guess. So I just want to give it like a solid go again. And so I'm like, okay, how about for my 12th year, I actually try consistently posting, because I think a problem happens. I think I've actually heard this from like several people, but it's like when you stop posting, you just kind of like you're not in the rhythm of posting. And then months will go by and you're just like, oh, I haven't posted in how long? So I think, for my 12th year, I'm going to really put an effort, put a schedule, and actually try and just like adhere to a schedule. And it doesn't mean that it has to be like an amazing video, because I think I put a lot of pressure on myself. I'm trying different methods of creating videos, which I think is good, because my taste just my abilities didn't match my taste. And I think my abilities are getting there, slowly and surely, but it's just like, I just need to keep like putting stuff out and like putting myself out there instead of just like drawing back so much out of like fear. I need to invite other people to support me on my journey, because if I'm not putting myself out there, and again, I think there's a period where I just like kind of needed a rest, and like I think it's important to live life. And I feel like a lot of people are actually just getting sick of social media, because I was reading this book by Cal Newport, and there was like a line in it that I just loved, but I can't even quite describe it and explain it. But he says something like, the moment in itself gets flat. I probably butchered that. I should really stick to an outline and a plan, or bring these resources with me. But it's like, if you're just a YouTuber and you're just YouTubing along just for the sake of YouTube, it's kind of like when a podcaster podcasts with a podcaster, and then it's just like a little flat, you know? Does that make sense? I'll put the actual quote on the screen, because I'm not sure that I quoted it right. So if you're on YouTube, you'll be able to see that. So that's my 12-year anniversary. It is my 10-year anniversary of graduating from high school. And this is just top of mind for me because I substitute taught at my high school. And I don't know, I still love going back to my high school. And it's just bizarre because a lot has changed in the outside world, but it feels like very, very little has changed inside of that high school. Even the teachers who I had 10 years ago are still there. A lot of them, I think some of them are going to retire soon, and some have. The lore from when I went to high school from 2010 to 2014 is still there. Like, there are still kids talking about like teachers from my year and things that happened during like the years that I was there, which is honestly kind of crazy. Because I feel like a lot just happened to happen when I was going to high school. And yeah, I mean, they have like one new wing in the building, but otherwise, like, it's cool because sometimes I have reoccurring dreams in my old high school, and I was able to walk through the halls again, and it's kind of bizarre, but it's just nice being somewhere that just feels like a solid anchor point. It's like a very grounding experience to go back. Like, the administrator is the same, the principal has changed, but I can see old teachers. I could see teachers that I didn't even have that are just like familiar faces. It's like a bizarre but nice experience, especially for me, like the last few years before, like after 2020, I've been moving around a lot. Like, I went to school in LA, I moved to New York, and I was just like exposed to like so many different faces. I guess like Alaska's like a very, very grounding place for me. It's where I grew up, and I just know it well. I know people here. I know, like, I don't know, some takeaways that I had. There's like now a helicopter flying right overhead. Another way to test my microphone. Drink break. All right, there are a few thoughts that I had while I was substitute teaching. First of all you have to do, first, actually, I think that substitute teaching for high school, a public high school in particular, is really interesting because these kids, this is a test of your energy, first of all. In the way that it's like, honestly, some of them are draining, but also it's the way that you exude your presence that will either make kids listen and respect you or not listen and not respect you. For the most part, actually, like, all the kids in my classes were really good. I just kept switching around because I don't know if it's always been like this. But they needed like subs every single day, and like I wasn't the only one. There are like 8 substitute teachers, and we all just like, it would honestly be a great show. Like, if someone wrote a show about substitute teaching, it'd be really interesting. But for the most part, I had pretty good students, and I feel like there's always like a connecting point that you can have with them to make them more understanding. But it is really interesting because you do have to be confident and you do have to control a room. And so it really is just like it's a test on your on your energy that you exude. So it's kind of interesting because, like, for college, people are paying to be there. Their parents are paying for them to be there. For private schools, you probably have kids of a, I don't know, certain background, but in public school you just have every type of person. And I've said this before, but my high school was like apparently the 5th most diverse high school in the nation. And yeah, you just kind of have every kid from every background in Anchorage, but also at our high schools. So that was like really interesting. And I will say, this made me feel extra good about my sobriety because not all kids that were late smelled like weed, but all the kids that did smell like weed were extremely late. The weed. So that was kind of interesting. And I don't think high schoolers should be smoking weed. That's like end of point blank. Like, luckily I did not smoke. I smoked, I think, for the first time I smoked in high school, and then I was like, yeah, I'm never doing that again. But that's just so early and unproductive. Like, the 2 kids who I know they were smoking weed instead of coming to class. Like, you could just tell, like, immediately, either from their smell or they just had a certain dazed look that I would think that I would never have, but they had it. So I don't know. But that kind of made me feel bad about the future state of the super easy access to weed nowadays. Another thing that I thought was really interesting, I was in a class. It was kind of crazy being in that class because I literally had that teacher, and he did not like me because I miss school a lot. And he literally told me one day, he was like, I would actually fail you if the school district would let me, but they won't. But yeah, I felt more sympathy for him after I didn't like dislike him. I just disliked his class, and I feel like we had a good relationship, but I felt for him a lot after I substitute taught for his classes, because those were exhausting. So tiring. They're the most rewarding, but the most exhausting. One piece of advice that a teacher that was there that I didn't have, but he looked familiar, after one of my pretty tiring classes on Friday, and they all, like, a few of them left early, and I was just like annoyed. He was like, oh, how'd it go? Like, usually the name of the teacher comes out on Friday, and I'm just like, ooh, are you doing okay? Because their classes are just kind of tough. And I was like, yeah, I don't know how you guys do it. Honestly, you guys are not paid enough. Like, it can be so tiring, and you guys are doing God's work. And he was just like, it's really not that bad. It's really the teachers who come in who are super young, who try to save the world, who are trying to change the world and save everyone, that burn out the quickest. And I was like, wow, there is really a life lesson to that. That really spoke deep to me at the moment, because I do feel like I try to do that a lot of the time, where I'll try to be like, oh, I need to save people or everyone or whatever circumstance I'm in, or make this have like a lot of meaning or whatever, where, he said that like his job can be really rewarding because you really help the people who want to be helped, and you can't help everyone. And I mean, that's very true. Like, I look back on my high school years, and I have like a few people who I'm just like, that person really helped my life a lot. Like my school counselor, one of my English teachers that I was really scared of, who actually wrote my letter of recommendation to substitute teach, and who's still there. And he said hi, and I was so happy to see him. And I don't know, you just have those people that really helped you a lot, and I still look back and I still think about them all the time. So that was really insightful. Another thing that was super interesting was I was in a class, the same class that I had the teacher of, and I don't know if he did this on purpose, but he left me the attendance sheet was like the seating arrangement, which he was actually the only teacher who did that. So they had their face and then the seating arrangement, because usually, even if I had a class like a few times, like back to back, I would forget the students' names. It's only if I have like, I can only remember like a few kids per class, like over the series of days. So I was like starting to get a little better, but I would usually forget names. So it was nice to have like faces to the seats. And then for one of the days, he had all of their grades attached in the attendance folder. And so I could see who had the best grades and who had the worst grades. And this was fascinating, because genuinely all of the kids, for the first few days, I couldn't see this information because I had this class a few times, and this was the exhausting class, but also the most rewarding class. For the first few days, I was just like, I just had a group of kids, like the girl was flirting with the boy, and then they were distracting their whole group around them, and they were just talking the whole time. And honestly, they're pretty annoying from like a teacher's perspective, because they were just talking and not on task, and you could hear what they were talking about, just dumb stuff. And then there was a group of boys who sat together at a lab table and just did their work all together. And for the day that I could see everyone's grades, everyone would be like, what do you have in this class? And they'd be like, I have an 82 or whatever. Or they'd like make fun of each other for having a bad grade, and then they'd say like, no, I have a B in this class. And then when I saw everyone's grades, all the kids who were sitting together talking the whole time legitimately had the worst grades, like some of the worst grades in the entire class, and all of them were lying about their grades. The kids who were at a lab table working together, there were like 3 boys. I literally had to ask their names just to confirm that they all had the highest grades in the class. And then in a different class, I saw this girl like turn around and ask this girl like, oh, do you know what we're supposed to do for this project or whatever? And she's like, oh, I don't really know. I don't really have a good grade in this class. She was straight up lying because she had like one of the highest grades. It's just fascinating because I feel like everyone, the kids with the best grades and the kids with the worst grades all lied about their grades, for better or worse. And my takeaway was genuinely like, who you are friends with really matters. Who you sit next to, who you talk to really matters. And I went around like kind of using that as like a lesson for some of the classes. I'm just like, it's so crazy because in one of the classes, like I could see the grades, and the kids who all sat next to each other and talked had the worst grades. I was probably like one of those teachers. But no, I actually think the kids, I don't know, I think they enjoyed having me there because I'm closer to their age than their teachers. And I also learned that all you have to do, genuinely, all you have to do to get Gen Z high school kids to focus is say, all right, guys, lock in. Like that actually made like some of the kids, once I started getting more acquainted with them, like some of the kids in that group, I would start like calling them out and being like, okay, lock in. And one of them like literally sat at the front with me, and he was just like on his computer, which is kind of hilarious because I don't know, my old roommates in Austin would say that, and they're all technically Gen Z. I don't know, I think high schoolers are still Gen Z, and they would say that. So I feel like I got some intro to Gen Z lingo. But since I'm not on TikTok, and I usually just watch people that are like my age or older, I'm like pretty out of the loop, I guess, for the slang. There's one really funny clip that I got from when I was subbing, and I was I was writing down like some of the things that they were all saying. I don't know why I was doing this, but it was just funny to me. It's like Riz, lock in, Sigma male, alpha male. I think that was kind of it. But they also said you're cooked. Like if someone did something super embarrassing, they're like, you're cooked, bro. And then I was like writing them down, and then one kid was like, are you writing us up? And then I'm like, no, I'm just writing down some slang. And then he was like, oh, for my next class, like my teacher asked me to do that. Could I see that? And I was like, yeah. Yeah. And then I would like ask some of them what it meant. So if you watch my reading the fiction books I missed out on video, whenever that comes out, it'll either come out next or like not at all next. I'll try to leave that clip in because it was really funny. Now it's raining. It is currently 10:04, so it's still pretty bright out. So those are my most intriguing takeaways from substitute teaching. I also just think it's like, I have like a related thought that might just be too out there that I'm not sure that I'll be able to articulate, but I think it is kind of bizarre that there is like a certain language that everyone is kind of tuned into. And I kind of think about this even for different communities. It's like, if you watch someone, or I guess like in this case, like, I don't know, if you're on TikTok or something, you are just automatically attuned to a certain language that like your millennial substitute teacher will not understand. And I think it's obvious, but like I've always said that there will be greater generational age gaps between fewer years. But I also think it's just really interesting because there are things that YouTubers say or like influencers say, and even if you're watching someone who has like a certain way of talking or some slang that they use, it'll just like become a part of your vocabulary. This was really interesting too because I recently went to Korea. This is not even on my update list. I had one of the best trips like a top trip. My boyfriend basically went for work, and then he invited me to come, and then my mom and sister were like, hey, we'll come too. So we ended up having a really good time. Actually, for the first whole week I was sick. Like I don't remember the last time I got sick, but I was actually pretty sick. So the first like 4 days I just laid in bed in our hotel and I didn't go out. But I had an interesting thought, because social media is kind of the same way, where after I went to Korea, I've always wanted to learn Korean, but I've just made no real effort towards it. And then this last time I was like, okay, I really want to try to learn Korean. And so I started looking up YouTube videos, or I just saw this one like interview. It was like a street interview on like how all these people learned Korean in Korea. And a guy was asking, and then this girl answers like, I started watching Korean YouTubers, and I would watch like specific ones. Like I remember I watched Singles Inferno. That's kind of like the only Korean show that I've watched in like the recent years. And there was this girl, Gia, I think, and she either started a YouTube or was a YouTuber, and then her channel just like blew up. And this girl who was watching really liked her mannerisms, and so she was like, I want to be able to speak like her. And I thought that was so fascinating, because it's like everyone has different mannerisms, everyone has different ways of talking, and it's obvious now that it's like, oh, if you want to learn how to speak a certain way, or it's like if you have international friends and some of them have like British accents because the way that they were taught was like a just a British speech. What I don't know. I just thought that was really interesting, but I think that translates over to the people who you watch. And a lot of the time I can tell who people watch just by the language that they use or the slang that they use. Not all the time, but it's like if you're reading a certain book, like you probably, or if you're reading a series of books and you're like, oh, I like this book, and this book, and this like one person like talked about it, then it's like you can kind of tell who people are watching. But I also think it's interesting thinking of it from the opposite way. It's like if you don't like the people, or if you're like someone who hate watches people or whatever, I think it's really important to use like discipline and to not watch those people, because you don't want to be like them. I don't know if any of that made sense. I feel like there's actually kind of like a deeper topic there, but I'm kind of just brushing the surface because it was just like a afterthought from a different topic, but whatever, I'll keep it in. So yeah, that was substitute teaching. Yeah, it's my 10-year reunion, but I feel like I already got my 10-year reunion of just like being in the same space. I ran into one of the women who literally taught me how to do math in the 5th and 6th grade. It was like a classmate's mom, and it was really cool seeing her, because I had just this year developed film, and I just took all of my disposable cameras to develop them in Austin, because the one place that I used to go here locally shut down. And I mean, you can get them done at like CVS and Walgreens, and I think there is a quality difference. So I just brought them because I knew that there'd be a cool place to develop them. And I had no idea what was on some of these cameras, and I was just like, this is a super old camera. It's been in my house for ages, and I'm going to use it up and then develop it. Turns out it was a camera from like 6th grade, and I had a bunch of photos from like someone's 6th grade birthday party when they rented like a limo, and we all like just went down the Seward Highway, which is a beautiful highway in Alaska, and we just took pictures with the mountains in the background. And her son was in these photos. So it's literally like 15 years later. I don't know how long. Very long, at least a decade. We know that because it's the 10-year reunion. I feel like 15 is an appropriate number. 15 years later, and the same year that I decide to come back to substitute teaching, she's there. And then I'm like, hey, I would love to share these photos with you because your son is in them. And I don't know, I thought that was kind of like a cool little mini synchronicity that I could actually send them to her. And then I sent it to a bunch of other people who I'm still in contact with. But I had like a weird amount of photos of him, or I had 3. And it just feels really good to develop film and actually send them to the people. But in this case, I was just like, I haven't talked to this kid in like over probably like 15 years. So it was cool to be able to send it to his mom, and we connected, and it was really nice. And I don't know, it's just really cool to see people and like grow up seeing people and then getting to see them again. Yeah. I don't really remember what else I shared in my last podcast episode, but it was 1 hour and 44 minutes total. So clearly a lot of stuff. But I guess my last update from February 2nd is that, yeah, I went to Korea with my boyfriend. He was working for a week, so he was actually working the week that I was sick, which was kind of perfect because then we could explore and hang out with my mom and sister. And this was also a really interesting thing. Okay, so we actually went the exact same time last year for a wedding. We went to Busan for like a family friend's wedding, and my brother was able to come and his wife and my dad. And then we ended up being in Korea exactly a year later. And the bizarre part was that our aunt and uncle who were there last year, who we didn't really coordinate a trip with, they just happened to be there last year. And it's not like we go to Korea like all the time at all. But I guess we have gone twice in the last 2 years. But they also just happened to be there at the exact same time. So it was really cool. We went to Jeju Island with them. And it was also really cool because my parents and... Do I want to share this? I guess it's not a big deal. But my parents and my boyfriend's parents were roommates in Korea. And they went to Jeju Island like 30 years ago or something. So that was really cool to experience that with my boyfriend. And then I was sick for this, but I for some reason have just been looking. I was like not obsessed, but I was like really intrigued by the fact that we had been there like 1 year ago that day. And also like our uncle and aunt were there at the same time. And then bizarrely we ran into them at the airport, and someone was just calling my mom's name because we had no plans of like going at the same time. And then she was just like, and then it was my uncle. So they were at the airport at the same time. But we all were there for Mother's Day. So we were like gonna meet for lunch, and we did. And my uncle picked this spot that he loves going to, my uncle who lives in Korea. And he always goes there, and we went there last year. And it was closed on Sunday, probably for Mother's Day. So they had to find a new place to go. And then a few days later, they all go and meet for dinner. And I'm sick, so I don't go. But I'm back at the hotel, and I see on my phone that 1 year ago that day, we had all been at the exact same restaurant with our family. So that was like kind of a weird experience because they had been trying to go to that restaurant like before, and then they just happened to go that day, and it was exactly a year later. And I shared that with everyone, and I don't know what that means, and I also wasn't there, but I thought that was really, really interesting, just like the weird little coincidences. And yeah, I filmed like 2 videos that I'm pretty excited about, but I'm just not sure of how to move forward with which video or what. And since it's been so long on my channel, I kind of like, I think like Elliot told me this one time. He was like, once you take a really long break from your channel, you need to have like a banger video coming back. And I think people are just kind of used to me disappearing on my channel because I have only had like a few periods of actual consistency, which honestly I'm kind of fine with. But I do kind of feel like I need some explanation, but also maybe this is just my explanation of like why I've been gone. So I think I'm going to try to take the pressure off myself of like trying to make a big thing, but I really do want to come back to like a consistent posting schedule. Some other updates is that I discovered Final Cut for the iPad. And so it's much easier for me to transfer my iPhone footage. And so I really want to start doing like short form content, because a big barrier for some reason was just transferring my footage from the iPhone and then like airdropping it all to my computer and then importing it to Final Cut. But it makes it so easy on Final Cut on the iPad. And actually a year ago, not today, but when I had journaled about it, I had just met Jade. Her channel is Unjaded Jade in New York. So many weird things happened actually a year ago, like in June. So many interesting things. Like a lot of my videos actually take place from like June and July of like where I started getting stuck on my videos. That was like the first time I prayed for the first time in adulthood, and just a series of crazy events like happened after that, which led me on a whole another journey that I didn't even touch on this podcast episode, which I don't know if I'm ready for, because I feel like if I got embarrassed from talking about sobriety, that would be a whole topic that I don't know. But basically, prayer is now a part of my daily life, or I try to make it a part of my daily life. But yeah, that set me on that whole journey. But a year ago, a few days ago, I met Jade, and she and I was kind of like telling her my current state of like YouTube, and I don't know, but she told me that something that really helped her was doing like a short a day, or she was like either planning on doing like one short YouTube short or maybe like Instagram reel a day, or she had just done it. And she was basically just saying how helpful she found doing this little shorts challenge, or how helpful it would be. So we tried to arrange doing this as like accountability buddies. And then I ended up just taking a break on YouTube. And I don't know if she ever actually did it. I feel like she actually posts like very frequently. So she probably in some way, shape or form doesn't really need to. But I feel like it'd be really helpful for me just to get the ball rolling again. So this is kind of me trying to speak this into existence of, and I actually never, I don't know if I posted on Shorts or my Instagram, because I really don't post. I've never felt that connected to Instagram. It's kind of just like my platform that I go to. I don't know. Like, I don't even know. I should do like an analysis of like, what does my Instagram say about me? I haven't posted on there since also actually probably October of last year. So I thought it'd be kind of fun maybe. And I feel like a lot of people are, Instagram feels kind of like, maybe just like in some of the creators that I'm watching, it kind of feels like more personal, like YouTube, like 10 years ago vibes, instead of, I don't know. I don't feel like I see a lot of YouTube shorts, so it doesn't seem that personal to me. It's not like I'm getting to really know someone through their Instagram or their YouTube shorts. This must be confusing. But I kind of do feel like I've been getting to know parasocially some creators through their Instagram reels. So I'm kind of tempted also, just as like I'm like literally sitting on 7 videos. Okay, I'm not literally sitting on it, but I'm working on or have filmed already 7 videos, and they're just like in the process of editing or just like being sat on, not literally. But for short form, it's like, you could spend one day and then have a final product. And I've really never focused on short form, although it's obviously something that's very prominent in the social media space nowadays with TikTok shorts and reels. I have a TikTok, but I don't have it on my phone. I feel like I've never really wanted to get that into TikTok. I don't really want to be on TikTok. I've heard great things about it. I just, for personal moral reasons, I don't want to be on TikTok. And apparently there are talks of it like I don't even know how they would do that, but it's going to be shut down. I feel like everyone knows that, or purchased by another company. So I don't know. That's what I'm like curious and maybe interested in trying to do some more short form. And I guess the place that it would live is Instagram Reels, which is kind of like bizarre to me because I really, again, just like really don't post on Instagram. So I think that'd be like a really interesting space. So if you have made it this far, and you see me post a reel, please support it, comment, hype me up a little bit there, because that'll be like a really interesting format that I'm definitely not used to, but I think it would be really helpful. And something that I'm also really trying to do more instead of vlog style. I feel like I'm maybe covering too many things in this podcast, but this will be my last thing. Instead of just vlog style, because that's all I've ever done for the last 12 years, is I'm trying to make more, because there are times where I actually vlog something or capture something and it's like a transformative moment, but in the moment of a vlog and in the way that vlogs are captured in real time, it doesn't always translate to the value that moment has had on my life. And so what other method could I use to portray that? It's like kind of like a more storytelling method. And so I've been exploring that format, which I think requires voiceover, which has never been my favorite thing for some reason. But I recently listened to this podcast, or it was a YouTube video with Jack Conti on Digital Spaghetti, the OG Pamplemousse like YouTuber, now founder of Patreon and of this YouTube channel. And he was talking to Max Joseph, who apparently like used to edit for Casey Neistat and like he has like a lot of cool videos on his own, but I had never seen his work because I hadn't even watched the video that they were talking about on that channel, of Casey Neistat's like Make It Count video. But he said that he does what's called a radio edit, in which he records the audio first and then he lays all of the visual and like sound effects and music after, which I thought was mind-blowing because I always start with video clips, like vlog clips, and then I have like a story in my head, but it doesn't always, it's hard, and then I try to fit in the audio and voiceovers last, and then it ends up feeling really awkward and uncomfortable. And I think that's why I kind of hate voiceovers, because it's not like fitting a puzzle piece together. It's like putting a piece of furniture together and then putting something on top and being like, okay, I guess that fits, so here's the video. So yeah, if I'm able to utilize all these different tools and things that I've learned in the last year, that was not a whole list, but I feel like I've been learning a lot in the last year, trust me. Because I'm kind of I like have taken a writing course that I don't even know if I talked about that on this channel or my podcast. I took this editing course, or I purchased like someone's course, and honestly I think it actually helped a lot too. So basically I feel like I've learned a lot. It's kind of funny because I actually have really been working towards like learning and building up my tools for making YouTube videos. But like literally a month ago or 2 months ago, I was just like, yeah, I think I need to quit YouTube and just focus on podcasting if I want to get anywhere with it. Also a part of the one thing they talk about moving from E to P. I'm just literally introducing like a whole nother crazy concept. I'll put a screenshot for anyone watching on YouTube because I'm not going to explain this because I need to review my stuff before I start bringing random stuff up. But that's kind of why I love podcasts, is just so I can talk and flow and like share all of my little learnings. But I should probably do it in a more organized way if I'm going to bring some concepts up. One of the ideas is that like a lot of the time when you're trying to get to the next level, it's moving. You start with the entrepreneurial approach. So you're basically just figuring, for me, like YouTube out, and you're figuring out what works. And then you're trying to get to the next level, which I think is the P is for purpose, I think. And that requires like trying new things, like really leveling up, whether that be like learning new stuff, like even making new relationships, which honestly I feel like I've done in the last like 2 years, or just like, you know, really elevating. But you kind of hit this point of like the status quo of like of what you've always done. So for me, wanting to quit YouTube, I'm like, oh, I think I need to quit YouTube, where really you need to break past that point to get to the next level and try something like completely new and different. Because if you just keep hitting the ceiling and trying something else, you'll eventually just keep hitting the ceiling, and then you'll be like, oh, it's like, so for me, the thing that I was going to do next is just like, oh, I'm just going to do my podcast. But then eventually I would probably hit a ceiling and then be like, okay, well, this isn't working anymore. So like, what's next? And I guess really anything can speak to you, because that also really spoke to me. But for some reason, I didn't really take that into consideration until I journaled about it later. And I was like, oh, this is like really interesting, because the only thing that I had concluded from that was like, oh, I need to quit YouTube and focus on the one thing. And what is that one thing? It's podcasting. But seeing as how I recorded a whole hour, 44-minute long podcast and didn't post it because it felt a little too vulnerable, I'm like, I don't know. Because at least with YouTube videos, I don't know, you can kind of shape it and make it as comfortable or uncomfortable as you want, instead of me just being raw and sitting here for an hour plus. So those are all of my updates. That is what I've been doing, what happened in the last 4 months, and why I left and kind of disappeared for quite a while. But yeah, I've honestly been having a great life experience, and like great learnings. But I do think that like it feels like something is missing, and I think it's just my lack of expression. That's my update. I hope you enjoyed this podcast of my ramblings. I am really trying to be organized and have like an outline and a purpose for posting, instead of just like blah, 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 word vomiting. But yeah, I guess the purpose of this was just to update you on my whereabouts and my future plans. So thank you so much if you got this far. That's amazing. And I really appreciate you genuinely so much. And I'm very excited to challenge myself and to show myself to yeah, you know what I'm talking about. So if you listen this far, so thank you. And I will see you either on my YouTube channel or my IG reels, or honestly on you might just see me next on here. But check out all those platforms in the coming. I think on YouTube you could probably expect like at least a July 5th posting, so on my Amory Chase channel. But hopefully in the meantime you can find me on short form for the first time. So I will see you there. Bye.